84 versus 586. It's not the score of a game. Those are the mortality rates for heart disease in 2 European nations. A staggering gap that reveals how, on the same continent, 2 completely different healthcare realities coexist. Why does this happen? To find out, we will compare the 5 most virtuous European countries with the 5 that are facing a true heart epidemic. Our aim is absolutely not to denigrate certain nations, but to understand the real, deep causes of this crisis. Fair warning, the answers are far more complex than you might imagine. Welcome to Amazing Europe. Most vulnerable, at number 5, Belarus. In the heart of Europe lies a country where being male is one of the greatest risk factors for premature death, a place where men's life expectancy has plunged for decades, leaving entire families without fathers, husbands, and brothers. This is the reality in Belarus, our 5th most at-risk country. The reason for this tragedy is not a single factor, but a mix of lethal habits rooted in its recent history. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the country was flooded with a wave of cheap alcohol, pushing Belarus to the top of the world rankings for per capita consumption. Added to this is a smoking rate among men that exceeds 40%, one of the highest on the continent. The coup de grace comes from the diet, often rich in saturated fats and salt. The perfect fuel for hypertension, the silent killer that affects nearly a third of the adult population. The result of this mix is shocking, a cardiovascular mortality rate of 470 deaths per 100,000 people. But the real cause runs deeper. It is systemic. It is the legacy of a state with a healthcare system designed to treat emergencies, not to prevent them. A system that responds to heart attacks already in progress, but struggles to educate the population to avoid them. This reactive approach has a devastating human cost, striking the workforce in the prime of life. But is this fate unavoidable? Or can a different state model produce a radically different outcome? The answer lies in our 5th best country. Most resilient, at number 5, Denmark. What if your government could save you from a heart attack without you even noticing? If decisions made in Parliament had a more powerful impact on your heart health than any medicine? In Denmark, our 5th best country, this is not science fiction. It is a national strategy. In 2003, the Danish state made a revolutionary move, becoming the first country in the world to almost completely ban industrial trans fats, a true poison for the arteries from all foods. It then invested billions of kroner in bicycle superhighways, making cycling not a hobby, but the most logical and quickest choice for the daily commute of millions. These are invisible interventions that transform the environment and make the healthy choice the easiest one. This proactive approach yields an extraordinary result, a mortality rate of just 99 deaths per 100,000 people. But the most revealing figure in the statistics is something else. Disease prevalence, that is how many people live with a heart condition, is not among the lowest. This uncovers the real Danish secret. Prevention does not always stop citizens from falling ill, but the system is so efficient that it does not let them die. The credit goes to a universal healthcare model where the general practitioner is the cornerstone of prevention, and where the state uses comprehensive digital registers to monitor the nation's health in real time. It is stark proof of what happens when the state does not limit itself to treating the sick, but actively designs a healthier society. But a state's policies are only half the story. The other half, sometimes, is written in the food we eat. Most vulnerable? At number 4, Serbia. What if the food that defines your culture were also what is slowly killing it? This is the harsh reality facing Serbia, our 4th most at-risk country. Here, community life revolves around rich, flavorful cuisine. It is comfort food, the fare of family celebrations. But behind this culinary heritage hides a statistical time bomb. The average Serbian consumes more than double the daily salt limit recommended by the World Health Organization, a direct trigger for widespread hypertension. Add to that a diet heavy in saturated fats from red and processed meats, and a low intake of fresh vegetables, and the arteries come under constant siege. The community, instead of protecting, amplifies the risk. With almost 40% of adults smoking, one of the highest rates in Europe, even social gatherings become a health hazard. This tradition translates into a devastating number, a cardiovascular mortality rate of 478 deaths per 100,000 people. But looking at the data shows that the impact is not limited to deaths. The burden of disease on everyday life is enormous, as demonstrated by a very high prevalence rate. Here, the very fabric of the community, sharing food, drink, and conversation, is intertwined with the factors that fuel this epidemic. But is it possible for culture and a love of food to become a source of strength rather than weakness? Could communal meals protect the heart instead of damaging it? The answer lies on the shores of the Mediterranean. Most resilient, at number 4, Spain. What if we told you that taking 2 hours for lunch is not laziness, but a life-saving medical intervention? There is a nation where the culture of food and companionship has become the most powerful shield against heart disease. Welcome to Spain, our 4th best country. The secret here goes beyond the famous Mediterranean diet. Sure, extra virgin olive oil, rich in anti-inflammatory polyphenols, is a scientifically proven pillar, capable of reducing heart attacks by up to 30% according to rigorous studies. But the real magic happens around the table. Slow, convivial meals and the tradition of the sobremesa, the time spent chatting after a meal, are not just social rituals, they are potent antidotes to stress, one of the leading killers of the heart. The community does not amplify the risk, it dissolves it. This lifestyle produces an outstanding result, a mortality rate of just 98 deaths per 100,000 people. And the data reveal a deeper success. It is not only about fewer deaths, but also fewer disabilities. In Spain, people who survive a cardiac event do so while maintaining a markedly higher quality of life. Life is not only lengthened, its fullness is protected. It is a virtuous ecosystem, completed by an efficient public healthcare system and habits such as the paseo, the evening walk that integrates movement into social life. But can such a lifestyle flourish everywhere? Or does it also depend on the air you breathe and the resources a nation can invest? Most vulnerable, at number 3, Ukraine. There are enemies of the heart that are not found in food or in cigarettes. They are invisible. They hide in the air you breathe and in the uncertainty of your economic future. For our 3rd most at-risk country, Ukraine, this is not a theory but a daily sentence. For decades, the country has borne the double burden of a fragile economy and a heavy Soviet industrial legacy. The chronic stress generated by economic insecurity pushes millions toward alcohol, smoking, and cheap, high-fat, high-salt foods. At the same time, air pollution from heavy industry fuels constant inflammation in the arteries of those who live in affected areas. It is a silent war fought on 2 fronts, one psychological and the other environmental. The impact on the nation is catastrophic. Heart disease is responsible for more than 60% of all deaths in the country, one of the highest percentages on the planet. This translates into a mortality rate of 504 deaths per 100,000 people, and the data point to an even darker truth. The numbers show not only very high mortality, but a devastating impact on quality of life. The disease is so aggressive that it disproportionately strikes people in their most productive years, paralysing the country's workforce and its future. It is the price a nation pays when its economic system and its environment become its worst enemies. But how much can the fate of a heart change when a country turns its economic wealth into environmental well-being? Most resilient, at number 3, Norway. What if a nation grew rich by selling the planet's most polluting resource, only to use that money to build an ecological and healthcare paradise? It is not fantasy, but the surprising reality of Norway, our 3rd best country. This nation has turned its vast oil wealth into one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. That economic stability not only reduces chronic financial stress for its citizens, but also finances a world-class universal healthcare system. Yet Norway's true secret weapon is a cultural philosophy called friluftsliv, the life outdoors. It is a national obsession with nature that weaves physical activity into everyday life from childhood, in an environment with some of the cleanest air on the planet. It is the exact opposite of a degraded industrial setting. This ecosystem of wealth, nature, and well-being produces an exceptional result. a mortality rate of just 95 deaths per 100,000 people. Official data reveal an even deeper success. The rate of years of healthy life lost to disease is almost identical. That means it is not only about saving lives, it is about preserving the quality of those lives, preventing long-term disability. Norway proves that investing in prevention works. But what happens when a healthcare system, by virtue of its history and economy, is forced to focus not on prevention, but on reacting to emergencies when it is already too late? Most vulnerable, at number 2, Bulgaria. Imagine a European Union country where life is so short that 3 of its regions sit at the bottom of the whole continent's life expectancy rankings. This is not hypothetical. It is the reality of our second most at-risk country, Bulgaria. Here, a cultural triple threat launches a daily assault on the nation's heart. Bulgaria endures one of the highest smoking rates in the European Union. Its diet is notoriously high in sodium, especially from traditional salty cheeses, far exceeding safe limits. This way of life creates ideal conditions for hypertension, which often goes untreated for a reason as simple as it is cruel: cost. In fact, of all EU countries, Bulgaria is the one where citizens are forced to pay the largest share of their medical expenses out of pocket. For many, preventive drugs are an unaffordable luxury, so people wait until the damage is done and the emergency is inevitable. The result is a catastrophic mortality rate: 536 deaths per 100,000 people. On top of that, Bulgaria suffers a severe shortage of nurses and doctors, who emigrate en masse to Western European countries with better pay and working conditions. But the deeper problem is that Bulgaria, also for historical and economic reasons, struggles to create a prevention-first mindset, focusing mainly on emergency care. What happens then in a nation that has built its entire philosophy on preventing that emergency from happening? Most resilient, at number 2, Switzerland. What if the secret to having an iron heart were not never getting sick, but living in a country designed not to let you die? There is a nation that has turned prevention from simple medical advice into true social engineering. This is Switzerland, our second best country. The Swiss system is a fortress. Funded by one of the highest per capita investments in the world, it is a proactive machine built on one principle: intercept danger decades before it strikes. Thanks to ubiquitous access to doctors and specialists, hypertension and high cholesterol are not a sentence for the future, but conditions managed meticulously from the moment they first appear. This philosophy is amplified by a national culture obsessed with movement, where hiking is almost a religion. The result is an incredibly low mortality rate, just 91 deaths per 100,000 people. But an essential point to consider is that the Swiss population enjoys very high health literacy. Citizens not only follow guidance, they understand the importance of prevention and actively participate in managing their own health, helped by a stable economy that allows access to top-quality food. Here, the healthcare system is the protective fence on the cliff's edge. But what happens when risk factors do not come only from the system, but are imprinted in the very air you breathe? Most vulnerable, at number 1, North Macedonia. What if the greatest threat to your heart lay not so much on your plate, but in the air you breathe every day? This is the reality for the nation at the top of our risk ranking, North Macedonia. Here, a mixture of lethal factors has created one of the most hostile environments for cardiovascular health in Europe. The assault begins with the environment. The capital, Skopje, is regularly ranked among the continent's most polluted cities. Fine particulate matter from coal heating and industry acts like sandpaper on the arteries, causing chronic inflammation that damages the heart day after day. To this invisible attack is added a cultural offensive. With almost 40% of adults smoking, the nation has one of the highest tobacco rates in the world. The Balkan diet, high in salt and saturated fats, completes the picture of a system under siege. An underfunded healthcare system, forced to concentrate on emergencies because it lacks resources for prevention, cannot withstand a multi-front attack. Added to this is an internal cancer: systemic corruption, consisting of informal payments to skip waiting lists and scandals over stolen medicines, which devours the few available resources and destroys citizens' trust in the system itself. The result is the most catastrophic mortality rate in our analysis: 586 deaths per 100,000 people. This is what happens when an entire ecosystem fails. But is it possible for a nation to seem to violate all the rules and still manage to create the most protective ecosystem imaginable? In fact, the country that ranks first on the positive side of our cardiovascular list is also world famous for its cuisine rich in cheeses, fats, and wine. But before we reveal that country and uncover the positive and negative patterns that link these nations, if you found this video interesting, we kindly ask you to support our project with a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you don't miss our new videos. And remember, our new channel, America vs. Europe, where we rank all European countries, the United States and Canada according to different factors. Most resilient at number 1, France. There is a nation that seems to break every rule. Its cuisine is rich in saturated fats, butter, cheeses, pâté. Wine is a constant at its meals. By any logic, its citizens should be on the brink of a cardiac crisis. Instead, they have the strongest hearts in Europe. This is France, the pinnacle of our ranking. To explain this paradox, people once credited red wine, but that explanation is now shown to be incomplete and, in some respects, outdated. It appears instead that part of the answer, we repeat, only part of the answer, lies in the types of fats that are abundant in French cooking. For example, the fermentation that produces brie or roquefort generates vitamin K2. This vitamin does something crucial. It prevents calcium from petrifying the arteries, directing it instead toward the bones. It is a direct vascular protection. Add a culture of moderate portions and very low snacking, and the mystery dissolves. It is the biochemistry of tradition that wins. But food and culture alone are not enough. They are protected by an ecosystem created by the state. One of the best healthcare systems in the world guarantees universal access to prevention. Aggressive policies such as NOTRE educate citizens to make informed choices, making health a collective responsibility. This synergy between culture and policy produces the most extraordinary result in our comparison: a mortality rate of just 84 deaths per 100,000 people. It is not a single magical ingredient, but an entire protective ecosystem. It proves that a nation can build a fortress around its citizens' hearts, not through deprivation, but through quality, culture, and a system that seeks to care for everyone. Our journey across the two extremes of cardiac health in Europe reveals an unequivocal truth. The gap is not random. The fate of our hearts is shaped by two immense forces, largely beyond our individual control. The first is the legacy of the healthcare system. On one side, proactive systems that invest billions in prevention, and on the other, reactive systems forced to chase emergencies once the damage is done. The second force is the economic and environmental ecosystem. On one side, wealthy nations that create protective environments with clean air and secure infrastructure, and on the other, countries where economic stress and pollution create a toxic setting. Yet, the real lesson is hidden in the strategies we ourselves can adopt. We have seen that health literacy is a winning weapon, and that is also why we made this video. The healthiest countries teach us that the quality of food and the ritual of the meal matter more than any restrictive diet. They teach us that movement should be an enjoyable part of social life, not an hour of punishment in the gym. And, above all, they teach us that community can be an extremely powerful cure against stress, the silent killer of the heart. Systemic foundations may shape the odds, but habits determine the outcome. The nation we live in sets the stage, but we write the script of our health, one choice at a time. What do you think? In your opinion, what are the main causes of these disorders? And what do you think about the situation in your own country? For a more complete picture, we strongly recommend watching this video, in which we reveal the European countries that consume the most alcohol. That's all for this video. See you next time.